24 cycles.
If you've watched my introduction on the Clarion NZ501, you'll know that it has an awful lot of functions to offer, including sat-nav and the ability to play DVD video. But for me, one of the biggest things about any in-car unit is how good it is at playing music. So I thought this time I'd just take a closer look at the audio setup functions on the 501. And what we have here is the audio screen with the disc playing, and what I've got is a pink noise track playing on an endless loop. And what I'm going to do is show you on the RTA, as we make some of the setup adjustments, exactly what's happening. If we use on the remote control the set key, it will go into the settings menu. Now these are fairly obvious. I'm going to shoot through the first two. Balance is left right, fader is front back, we all know that. Okay, so if we select EQ, which gets us into some of the more interesting stuff, what we've got here is 3 preset EQ settings and a custom setting. Now just to show you what the pre-selected EQs do, because if you actually go into one of them, all you can do is select the level at which that's having an effect. But I'll show you on the RTA exactly what these are doing. If we select a bass boost, default EQ setting called bass boost, and that's with the level which you can set between -3 and +3, that's with the level at 0, and you can see it's giving a boost at around 100 Hz. Now 100 Hz I wouldn't say is the most useful place to put a boost, because that's going to make a lot of systems sound quite muddy. Typical speaker systems are going to struggle with any kind of boost at 100 Hz like that. You can go up to 3, which would actually put some of the speakers in danger and probably would sound quite poor. Now Excite is quite an interesting one. You can see how much it boosts at the top end. Now that is going to give you a lot of presence as well as top end. You can see how it is going up to a peak at around 8K. Now that's quite an interesting curve. That's bringing down the mid-band, or suppressing the mid-band, as well as bringing up the top end. So I can quite see situations where that would be quite useful. And you can take the level down, -1, -2, -3, so you can take that effect down. But notice how it's bringing that mid-band down from around just above 1K, where our ears are most sensitive, and therefore where it can sound quite strident on some systems, and you can bring that down and increase the presence above 2K. Okay, finally, just starting again back to no EQ, just so we can see the normal curve. The last option of the presets that Clarion provide is impact. And in a way this is probably the most useful of the lot, because it's a typical loudness curve. It gives you that smiley face that so many people used to set on the old graphic equalizers, if you're old enough like me to remember those things. And you can see that at the bottom end and at the top end it's increasing it, and in doing so it's bringing down the mid-band. So this is with the impact EQ with a setting of -3, so it's the minimum setting of the impact EQ. If we now go there and switch it off, let's see what happens. Notice how the bottom end drops off. Doesn't really affect much else. So actually that impact setting, just at the very basic setting, -3, and I've set it back again now, and look how it lifts the bottom end and makes it flat. That's actually a pretty useful setting. If we take that up to -2, look how it lifts the top end. That's nice. Now that's impact EQ setting set on -2. Where things get more interesting is the custom setting. Now in the custom setting we've got 3 bands, bass, mid and treble, and within the 3 bands we can affect the gain, the center or turnover frequency, and the width. So using the touch screen we can select for bass a gain up or down, which actually adds quite a heavy effect, and I'll show you later on the RTA exactly what this is doing. We can change the turnover frequency. On bass it will go 200, 100 or 50. Now the other function on here is the Q control, or the bandwidth. And again, anyone that's had a look at my introductory video on setting parametric EQ will probably already understand what's going on here. You can set a Q of 2 or 1.4 or 1 or nominally flat, which is 0.7. Now this will affect the width or broadness of the curve that you're creating around the turnover frequency where you set here. And I'll show you this more clearly on the RTA. Now we have the same options for the midband, which can be set from 1K, in fact from 500 Hz, 1K, 2K, and with a Q likewise of 0.7, 1, 1.4 and up to 2. Likewise for the treble, the Q remains the same in terms of the adjustment, and we can affect it at 5K, at or around 10K and up to 15K. So at the moment this is the basic output as it comes from the factory. And if we look at the bass first, this is the moment this is set to 50 Hz as the turnover frequency. So you can see as I go up through the gain, this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is the maximum. Now that's a great deal of boost that you're getting there. That's 10 dB, or in fact probably over, yes indeed, over 10 dB of boost there. Now that is with a Q of 0.7, which is a natural fairly broad Q. We can actually peak that up quite a lot. That's 1, 1.4 Q, and that's a Q of 2 where it will peak up quite considerably. And you can see there how it's peaking up exactly on the 50 Hz line. If I come back out towards 0.7, notice how it broadens out, and that will increase the whole of the bass end and not just the peak at 50. Now for the mid frequencies we've got center points of 500 Hz, 1K and 2K. And I'd say that probably the most useful is going to be the 2K, although potentially the 1K is useful if you're getting, depending on your speakers, if you're getting something very much in your face and you just want to take down the 1K. Let's go back 1K and we can see how we can take that down. I mean, that's exaggerating and you probably never want to do it to that extent, but you can see the kind of effect. That's with a Q of 2, so that's an extreme bandwidth setting. If we take it down to 0.7, and then maybe just take it up a touch. Now again, we've increased it by an exaggerated amount, probably. I actually like quite a lot of a kick at 2K. It really can bring the vocals out of the mix, but obviously it will depend on the speakers that you have, the positions of the speakers and so on. If we take it down to something maybe a little bit more reasonable, we see that kick at 2K, that's going to really give presence to vocals, which is going to be potentially very nice. And if we take it back down on the bass and go to 200 Hz and then start to give a little bit of an increase there. Now you can see, although it's slightly exaggerated, what that's doing, because it's effectively bringing down the band between around 500 Hz and 1K, which means you can add some warmth to the bottom of the vocal and presence to the top of the vocal, and bring down that band at which our ears are most sensitive, at around 1K. Because the restriction otherwise with the mid band, you've obviously got to set either a position of 1K or 2K. You can't have both, so you wouldn't be able to reduce at 1K if you wanted to increase at 2K. But doing it this way, increasing at 2K within the mid-band adjustment, going back to the bass and pushing up at 200 Hz, and then tweaking the Q control if necessary, gives you the same effect, because what you're doing is you're boosting either side of the band area that you want to effectively reduce. There's a lot you can do with the EQ on this unit, and in fact quite a lot of other units like it that give you this 3-band with what seems like limited settings, But in fact, as long as you've got the Q, the bandwidth control, you can do a lot. But that is vital. You need to be able to control the bandwidth that you're operating across. Now back at the main menu screen, we can look at some of the other audio functions. We've got subwoofer control, which is the level control for the dedicated subwoofer output level. So we can set the level we want there. We've got subwoofer phase control set to normal or reverse. So this will reverse it by 180 degrees. It's like switching the wires on the back of the speaker, but you can do it without actually having to go in and physically do it and just turn them around the other way. You may say, well, why on earth would you want to put the speaker out of phase? But depending on the mid-bass speakers and the angles of the speakers and the various quite complex acoustics that are going on inside the car, it can actually improve the overall phase and clarity of the whole audio system. Now if we go on down the list, we can see there's a bunch of other options. High pass filter, let's start there. This is part of the crossover section that gives you control over the high pass and the low pass filter. Now you can set it to pass obviously all the frequencies through, which is the default setting, or to high pass at 55 Hz, 85 Hz or 120 Hz. Now clearly this isn't intended to be used to split mid to tweeter. This is to protect the main car speakers or limit them if you have a subwoofer. So if we go now to the low pass filter, we can select a turnover point of 62 Hz, 95 Hz or 135 Hz. Now this section, the low pass filter, only works on the subwoofer output. So now I've got it set to the low pass filter position. The moment it's set to through, so obviously no filtering. If we set it to 62, now you can see, and if I just adjust the level of the actual volume output level, just to bring it up so you can see it a little bit more clearly. Now that's with a roll off at 62 Hertz. This is 95. If you've got a sub that can handle the upper bass quite cleanly, this would probably be a good setting for it. The other functions available on here to us are amp cancel, which means you can simply turn off the internal amplifier so it's not drawing power if there's no reason to have it powering up if you're using external amps for everything. And also what they call a Magna bass setting, which is a kind of a loudness setting. And again, I'll show on the RTA what the effect of this is. You can see the effect. It has actually quite a nice effect. I can imagine that would work reasonably well. However, it's a quick fix. I would suggest you take the time to play around with the EQ and get it set properly. But the settings that Clarion have provided would certainly allow someone to set up a good sound and deal with some of the real problems that you'll find in the car. Obviously it's not like having a very sophisticated EQ or active crossover, but it will certainly go a long way to help. Quite impressed with what they've done here, and to me, you know, as an audio person, I'd want to see this in every unit. So I'm glad Clarion haven't forgotten the audio side, which is, you know, like so many companies, where it all started for them.